Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to finish reading. Ooh, sorry for the blurriness. I'm going to pause. I'm going to finish reading chapter 2 of One Good Night, and hopefully in the next video I'll keep going with multiple chapters. Okay? Alrighty then. When Andy woke the next morning, it was in a mixed frame of mind. She'd had odd dreams all night, reflecting her ambivalence. On the one hand, she was about to lose her 6 dearest friends and protectors, people who had been more nearly parents to her than her own mother. But on the other hand, "Good morrow, Princess!" A brand new maid dressed in a gown of green and silver swept into the room carrying a tray, which she set down on Andy's bed. Then she handed Andy the oculars from her bedside table, something the other maids had never done. Andy put them on and watched her, a bit taken aback, while the maid went around the room, flinging back the draperies from the windows. The tray held herb tea, buttered bread, fruit and sheep's milk yogurt mixed with honey, something Andy particularly liked first thing in the morning. It was in fact breakfast in bed. In her entire life Andy had never had the treat of breakfast in bed. For that matter, in her entire life Andy had never had exactly the breakfast she liked best without having to ask for it, and even then, more times than not, she hadn't gotten it. "I am your new handmaiden, and my name is Iris," the girl announced, returning to the bedside. She was, truth to tell, a rather plain, freckle-faced girl, big-boned and looking more like a shepherdess than a maid. But she had an infectious smile, and when she added, "Mare is my auntie. I've been working in the palace where Lady Thalia has been the steward. Auntie told me a long time ago that if Lady Thalia was ever sent for, I was to put myself forward to come along with her, especially if there was a vacancy in your household. Thalia's a good mistress, and when I did ask if I might be considered, she said she thought we'd suit, you and I." Since the maid that had served Andy yesterday had been disinclined to do anything without being ordered, and was impersonal, cold, and opaque as a stone wall, Iris was a definite improvement. Add to that, she was Mare's niece. Well, suddenly Andy didn't feel quite so alone. "I can do hair in the Gordian knot, the calliope knot, the centaur tail, the twisted knot, and twisted tail with side locks, but I can't do curls," Iris continued, putting the tray on Andy's lap, shaking out a napkin and laying it across the front of Andy's nightdress. "I can do makeup, but someone will have to show me what I am to put where. I'm good with the wardrobe. I mend, and I can make creams and lotions and apply them, and massage. I can't read, but I can tell stories, and I can play a shepherd's flute." Andy blinked as Iris stepped back. "You already sound much more talented than my previous maid, Iris," she said finally. "Good! Then that's sorted," Iris said with immense satisfaction, giving another broad smile. "You suit me, and I suit you. Lady Cheris is waiting with a seamstress and fabric as soon as you're done eating. Lady Thalia wants you to look over some more servants while you're being fitted, and that's all there is for now. Would you like me to select a gown for the day, or would you prefer to?" "Oh, pick anything," Andy said vaguely, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Fittings already? And servant interviews? What next? She ate quickly, drizzling the yogurt liberally over her sliced fruit, and feeling very much as if she was going to need the extra energy. After rejecting several selections in the wardrobe, Iris brought out a plain ankle-length gown, in a blue that looked faded but actually wasn't, and an embroidered belt that laced up the front that matched. As soon as Andy was finished with her breakfast, Iris whisked the tray away, and briskly got her into her gown, then sat her down at the little stool in front of the dressing-table. With fingers that were surprisingly deft and gentle, she brushed out and put up Andy's hair. Not in a knot, but in some kind of tail on the top of her head, with a strand wrapped around the base of it. "Centaur tail," said Iris in satisfaction, turning Andy to face the mirror. "Suits you." It certainly did suit her. It got her hair away from her face and under control, but it was softer than the severe knot she usually wore. She looked at herself and smiled a little. This was a surprise. As pleasant a surprise as the breakfast had been. "Lady Cheris is waiting, and Lady Thalia," Iris reminded her, and with a guilty start the maid jumped to her feet. "No slippers," Iris said as Andy looked about for her favorite old sandals. "They're measuring your feet, too. Matching shoes to matching gowns. And new underthings, petticoats, and undergowns, stockings, underwear, and all. Lady Thalia says yours are a disgrace." "I suppose they are. I never think about them," Andy admitted guiltily. "Your maid should have," Iris replied tartly. "You aren't supposed to have to. I'll salvage what I can in here. You go, Princess." Andy nodded and got up. Iris ran to the door to hold it open for her with a wink, and closed it behind her. Andy stopped dead, staring around her in shock. Only 3 pieces of furniture were left in what had once been crammed full of old, outgrown nursery furnishings. 1 low stool, 1 small table, and a chair. The table and chair were already occupied by Lady Thalia. Beside the stool were Lady Cheris and another woman. "Come stand on the stool, Princess, so we can measure you," said Lady Cheris, when she didn't move. "That is a very good hairstyle for you. I believe that your new maid is a great improvement." "I thought she would be," Lady Thalia observed with satisfaction. "Where did all the furniture go?" Andy asked, feeling as if she had stepped into somebody else's rooms. "We've had all that wreckage taken away," said Lady Thalia. "You are to have your wing properly refurnished. You aren't a child any more, after all. You don't need nursery furniture." "No," she said, feeling dazed. "Of course not." Obediently she stepped up onto the stool, where the second woman, probably a seamstress, measured every possible part of her that could be measured, drew outlines of her feet, then made a rather good sketch of her face and took measurements of that, noting the measurements. Meanwhile Lady Cheris held samples of fabric up to her face, making humming noises to herself, handing some to the seamstress, tossing most into a basket. And while all this was going on, a parade of servants came into the room to be interviewed by Lady Thalia. Some she had seen about the palace, others were total strangers. As each interview was concluded, Lady Thalia looked at her with a most penetrating gaze. After the first one, Andy realized that she was supposed to show approval or disapproval, and the realization made her feel dizzy. She had never been allowed to pick any servant before, much less all of them. A very few candidates she liked immediately. Some she disliked even before they opened their mouths. Some seemed utterly unsuited to the positions they were applying for. On the rest, "I haven't the experience to judge," she said, deferring to Lady Thalia. She was afraid that this would lose her the lady's respect, but on the contrary, her new household steward seemed to approve guardedly. It was altogether astonishing how many new servants it seemed she would need. She was going to have her own cooks and all of their helpers, her own housekeeping staff, her own gardener and his helpers, as well as maids and pages, footmen and guards. Only with the guards did she feel on firm footing. Most of them she knew at least on sight, and several she'd known almost as long as she had known her faithful 6. She was supposed to choose a total of 18. She had no difficulty doing so. All presenting themselves were young, and she thought it was going to be rather strange to see no gray hairs among them. She chose 2/3 male, 1/3 female, a ratio of which Lady Thalia also approved. "The men will stand guard at the door to your wing and in the gardens," Lady Thalia announced. "The women will serve here within your rooms." About the time that Lady Cheris and the seamstress and the interviews concluded, the new furniture began to arrive. "Leave my bed!" Andy cried in alarm, when she saw serving-men heading into her bedroom with empty hands and a purposeful look in their eyes. They stopped in their tracks. Lady Thalia took a quick look in through the door. "The bed is the only piece of furniture in this wing fit to be used," she pronounced. "Take down the bed curtains, though, they're a disgrace. And the window curtains. Bring new, in the princess's colors." And in marched the servants. Shortly thereafter, out they came, with every piece of furniture except her bed. "Have you any particular desires as to how you want things arranged, Princess?" Lady Thalia asked. Andy stood there uncertainly, then shook her head. "In that case, I will have them follow my diagram, and you and I can retreat from this madhouse to your new study." My new study, she thought, dumbstruck. She followed Lady Thalia into what had been the nursery playroom, and last night had still been stuffed full of worn and broken toys, child-sized furniture, picture books, and the like. Now the warm and sunny room was a study. A real study, like her mother's. The low bookcases, battered and tilting, had been taken out. In their place stood floor-to-ceiling bookcases, made for adult books and ornaments, and arranged on the bookcases were the books that had once been arranged in piles on the floor in what she had designated as her reading room. There was a backless couch with one high arm to recline against. There was a real desk, a proper-sized one, already set up to take the best advantage of the light, with cubbyholes stocked with various sizes of paper, enough pins to have denuded a flock of geese, and 3 fat-bottomed heavy inkwells, the kind you couldn't tip over if you tried, holding red, black, and sepia ink, and sealing wax. She went over to it, feeling as if she must be in a dream, to see that there were even 2 kinds of seals, the kind for wax and the kind for ink. She picked one up. It was the escutcheon of the royal house of Acadia, inside a lozenge to show it was a child of the house, rather than the king or queen. Her own seal. The seal of her house. It was real. It was all real. She turned, still holding the seal in her hand, to survey the rest of the room. Beside the desk was a comfortable chair, not the backless stool she had been using. There were 2 other chairs beside the one at the desk, and a table with 4 more chairs around it at the farther end, near the fireplace. All of the furniture was made of bleached and waxed lime wood, which dated back to her grandfather's day, but which she secretly preferred to the dark, fumed oak of her mother's wing. There were no carpets either, but she was so used to that she didn't think she minded. "I will be giving you the household report here every morning," said Lady Thalia, "and asking if you approve of the menus for the day, as well as any expenditures from the household budget that I anticipate. I have looked over the budget allotted to us, and I foresee no difficulties. I take it that you prefer simple meals." She licked lips gone dry. "Oh yes, please. I used to eat whatever my servants ate." Lady Thalia chuckled. "There is no reason why that practice cannot continue, since the cook I have selected is both skillful and careful. It is not wise to be over-indulgent in one's food at any age, but at yours particularly you should continue to eat simply, and a good cook can turn the simplest ingredients into a fine meal, while a bad one can utterly ruin the most expensive and exotic." Andy nodded anxiously. "What do I need to know about my household right this moment?" "I hope you approve of my choice for maidservant?" Lady Thalia asked, and nodded with satisfaction when Andy replied that she did. "Good. Iris is not the equal of even the handmaiden of one of your mother's ladies." "Yes, but I don't want to wear gowns like theirs, or have my hair curled and pinned up and tortured, or—" Lady Thalia held up her hand. "Which is precisely why I chose Iris when she presented herself. I was told by those I trust of your taste. I believe you value someone competent, trustworthy, and certain in what she can do, and are not troubled if she is a bit rough-hewn." "I like her," Andy said without thinking, then immediately wondered if that was the wrong thing to say. Were you not supposed to like a servant? But someone like Iris, who would be with you at the most intimate of moments, someone who would be the person to care for you if you were ill. Good. It doesn't do to make friends of any servants except one's handmaiden, and then only if one knows the girl is steady, has integrity, and knows her place," said Lady Thalia firmly. "But if that is the case, as it is with Iris, then you will find having a friend in your handmaiden makes your path much smoother. She can and will tell you servants' gossip, and that is an invaluable source of information, and you can trust that she either will not gossip about you, or that she will tell nothing that is not commonplace knowledge. You can trust her with any delicate matter. You can trust that she will not spy on you. All these things are valuable beyond price to anyone in your position." I can see that," Andy replied, once again feeling overwhelmed. This was all so new, and the implications of what Lady Thalia was saying made her realize that perhaps it was a good thing that she had been a lonely child. Loneliness was going to be something that came with her new position, so it was just as well that she was used to it. Not that she would have chosen differently. She felt that being lonely, or in any case, alone, was not all that bad. At least now she would have some useful work to do, and maybe a little respect. "Let's take a walk around your wing, and you can decide if you want anything changed," Lady Thalia said, watching her expression keenly. "By then, I expect, Lady Cheris will have a suitable gown for you, so you can take your place at the Queen's morning audience." And Andy tried not to show her surge of panic. In the end, she needn't have panicked. Lady Cheris showed Iris what simple cosmetics to apply, and the gown was not a new one, but one of her old ones in a jade green, with the augmentation of some bands of bead embroidery to the neck and hemlines. Similar augmentation in the way of jade beads on the straps had been made to her sandals, and she wore a jade necklace and bracelets. Her mother seemed to approve. She smiled slightly when she saw her daughter, and indicated to Andy that for the audience she should take a place next to Cassiopeia's own handmaiden, just behind the throne. The one difference between Andy and the handmaiden was that Andy was allowed to sit on a low stool, while the handmaiden stood. The audience hall was a single large room with frescoes of dancing nymphs, all discreetly clothed, on the walls, and the floor set with sand-colored tiles. 2 lines of pillars painted with vines supported the roof, and to discourage loitering there was nothing to sit on except the throne and Andy's stool. While this might be hard on the aged or infirm, it did keep people from crowding in to gawk and gossip. Andy listened to everything as closely as she could, making mental notes when Cassiopeia deferred some decisions for a later date. Andy guessed that her mother would want information about the families and situations involved, and that it would be Andy's job to find that before the continuation of the audience. After a while she began to relax and enjoy herself. This was infinitely preferable to lessons with a dancing master that she would never use, or in the genealogies of the royal families of kingdoms that had never heard of Acadia and would never give their realm a second thought. There were more petitioners than there was time, which was the usual state of things. Those waiting showed disappointment, but no surprise, when Solon stepped forward to announce that the audience was concluded for the day. Those who had not yet been heard would come back tomorrow and the next day, returning as many times as it took before the Queen could get to their case. Andy was dismissed along with the rest, but at least she knew the protocols from all of her study of court etiquette. She made her bow and returned to her wing, with one of her new guards in attendance. It gave her a bit of a pang not to see one of her 6 at the door, but she hid it as best she could, and gave each of the young men standing there an encouraging nod. One opened the door for her, and she went in, to discover luncheon was already waiting for her in her dining chamber, with Iris and a table servant in attendance. Another shock. The only time she'd ever have a table servant was when she'd eaten with her mother. The servant presented dishes for her approval, served her portions of the ones she indicated, poured her drink, and kept her refreshed throughout the meal, somewhat unnerving for someone who had been helping herself all these years. Lady Thalia joined her, but only after asking permission. But she had to admit that she was beginning to find these shocks were more pleasant than otherwise. After your luncheon, you will bathe, and Iris will give you skin treatments to smooth your wind-ruffling complexion, and a massage, Lady Thalia announced. This is the usual order of things for a lady of rank. It isn't done to rush straight into work after eating. It ruins the digestion. Then I have arranged for you to give a proper dismissal to your old guards. I gather that they are the only ones of your former servants to whom you feel a friendly dismissal when a reward is due. Feeling a flush suffuse her face again, she nodded, grateful now to Lady Thalia that it had the lady's inherent dignity not to make such a gesture unthinkable. She would have leapt out of her chair and run to hug her. For future reference, Princess, when a good and faithful servant retires from one's service, it is perfectly appropriate to bid an affectionate farewell, and it is absolutely the done thing to include a monetary reward, Lady Thalia continued gravely. Such rewards are part of the household budget. You, however, do not bestow them directly. That is my job. They are made up into packets in leather purses in your colors, and rank and length of service determine the amount. For your information, as you should know these things, although the usual reward for a guard is rarely more than 4 thalers, in the case of those who have served as long as your 6 retainers did, it is appropriate to double the reward to 8. Is that good? She asked hesitantly. Since a very good small farm can be purchased for 6 thalers, yes, it is, the lady replied with a nod. Such rewards are calculated on the basis of the worth of a small farm. This allows those that have not been provident on their own to purchase something that can support them in their retirement, and perhaps even acquire a spouse to share it with. She blinked a little at that. The way it had been phrased, Lady Thalia made it sound as if the retiring guards were going to stroll down to the next livestock market and buy themselves a husband or wife. But then again, what did she know? Maybe that was exactly what would happen. Certainly the negotiations that attended the betrothals of any royal court had a lot of resemblance to a cattle auction. Well, at least she was going to be able to say goodbye properly, and make sure her 6 were going to be all right. That made her happy enough that she was willing to put up with gowns instead of tunics, and makeup, and even truly torturous hairstyles, and no more running off to the cliff ever again. That concludes Chapter 2. See you next time for Chapter 3. Have a good evening.